The desert hitchhiker. I had been driving the long desert highway near Big Bend National Park for hours when I noticed a figure standing at the roadside. It was already dark, and the horizon had disappeared behind a black wall of night. My headlights stretched only so far, cutting thin ribbons through the desert gloom. The figure lifted one arm, signaling for a ride. At first, I thought it was another stranded hiker like so many stories warned about. I slowed the truck instinctively, eyes darting to the figure. He didn't move as I passed, simply stayed rigid, staring straight ahead. Most hitchhikers shift weight, adjust posture, or glance around. This one remained completely still, almost statuesque. A strange chill ran up my spine as I looked in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him disappear. But there he was, standing in the desert darkness, frozen. A mile later, the highway curved slightly. That's when I saw him again. The same figure, exactly the same posture, one arm raised, waiting. My stomach tightened. The desert was vast, rough, and uneven. Even someone moving fast across open terrain couldn't have reached this spot in mere minutes. The realization made my skin crawl. He was appearing ahead of me. Somehow, impossibly. He was always there first. I considered turning back, but the road behind was endless black, and there was no safe shoulder to stop. Every instinct told me to keep moving. I tried convincing myself it was some trick of the light or my eyes, so the desert plays cruel games at night. But as my headlights swept past the next rise, there he was once more. Standing perfectly still, arm raised, waiting like a shadow carved from the desert itself. The third time I passed him, my heart pounded hard. His figure seemed impossibly still. The air felt heavier, and even the wind seemed to avoid that stretch of road. I caught a glimpse of his face, blank, empty, like staring into a mask. I blinked, and he was still there, unchanged. My rational mind struggled to explain it. There was no way he could have moved this fast across the desert terrain. I accelerated slightly, keeping a steady eye on the rearview mirror. My pulse raced as the desert highway stretched endlessly. The black hills on either side rose silently into the night. For a moment, I imagined someone walking along the ridge, keeping pace with me unseen. The thought made my hands tremble on the steering wheel. I glanced back again. The highway was empty once more, but I knew he would appear again. A few more miles and the road climbed toward a low pass. I tried to focus on the dry desert air and my breathing. The silence inside the truck felt oppressive. Then, as the headlights crested the rise, there he was again, his arm raised, motionless, waiting. I slammed my foot lightly on the brake before realizing I needed to maintain control. The desert seemed to hold its breath, as if watching what I would do next. I slowed to a crawl, keeping my eyes fixed on the figure. His clothes were dusty and worn, the kind of rough hiking gear someone might carry across the desert. But the stiffness of his stance felt unnatural. He didn't move at all, even as my truck passed. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation, any rational excuse for the impossible. But no amount of reasoning could account for the feeling that he was somehow always ahead. I checked the rearview mirror instinctively, half expecting him to vanish. The highway remained empty behind me. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. The impossibility of the situation pressed down on me. If he wasn't walking, how could he appear so consistently ahead? Every few minutes the road would curve, and every time, there he was, stiff, waiting, silent, and always just far enough ahead to terrify me when I saw him. The desert air smelled of dust and heat radiating from the stone. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, a hallucination, or even a mirage, but each sighting felt real, too real. My pulse throbbed in my ears. The next stretch of road twisted into shadowy turns. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My mind refused to let go of the notion that something out there was toying with me, and I couldn't understand why. I passed another bend, and there he was again, arm raised, posture unchanged. This time I slowed deliberately, studying him carefully. My flashlight from the truck illuminated just enough of his face, empty, expressionless, eyes fixed ahead, unblinking but somehow aware. I swallowed hard, realizing the desert itself seemed to amplify the fear. Something about him wasn't human, not in any way I had ever encountered. I accelerated slightly to keep distance, heart hammering in my chest. The desert stretched wide and open, yet I felt boxed in. Each mile passed slower than the last. Every time I turned a bend, I half expected him to vanish, but he didn't. He simply appeared again, always a little farther ahead, matching a trajectory I couldn't explain. Each sighting was predictable and unpredictable all at once. My hands shook as the truck rattled over small desert stones. The highway twisted along the valley floor, and I watched the hills on either side for any sign of movement. The figure never deviated, never hesitated, just stayed perfectly upright, arm raised, waiting. I tried muttering aloud, calling to him, testing whether he would respond. The canyon of black desert swallowed my voice, yet I could almost sense him listening. The moon rose slightly over the jagged ridges, casting ghostly shadows on the pavement. I kept glancing in the mirror, expecting impossibility again. Sure enough, a subtle hint of his silhouette appeared, reflected faintly in the glass. Though the road behind was empty, my breath caught in my throat. Each encounter seemed more impossible than the last. He existed just ahead of me and behind me at the same time, or perhaps outside the rules of the road entirely. I rounded the last major bend before the next desert plateau, slowing for the curve. There he was once more, arm raised, standing as if carved from the black night itself. I felt the heat of panic rising in my chest. The truck's headlights trembled across him, illuminating nothing but an impossible figure. For the first time, I understood he wasn't just ahead or behind. He was moving in a way I couldn't comprehend. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, refusing to look away. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, yet the figure seemed to anticipate every turn. I could feel it watching, calculating. My headlights cut a narrow swath through the darkness, illuminating nothing but rocks, sand, and the empty highway. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him shift slightly. A subtle motion, almost imperceptible, but it froze my blood. I swallowed hard, telling myself to keep moving, to ignore the impossible. But each mile brought him closer in a way no human could manage. My pulse hammered in my chest, each beat echoing like a warning. I tried muttering aloud, testing my voice against the night, but the canyon of desert swallowed it entirely. Yet from somewhere deeper in the dark, his voice mine whispered back, repeating my words exactly. My truck shook slightly over loose gravel as I accelerated, desperate to put distance between us. The desert around me was silent except for the engine and my own ragged breathing. Then the headlights illuminated him again, directly on the side of the road I hadn't passed yet. My stomach lurched. I hadn't slowed down. I hadn't stopped. And yet there he stood, impossibly ahead, arms still raised, waiting for me to reach him. I tried to swerve slightly toward the shoulder, but the truck's tires skidded against sand and rock. Panic rose in a tide that burned my throat. The figure remained perfectly still, unmoving, unblinking, a dark silhouette in the endless night. I realized I had no control over this. The highway and the desert were not natural to him. Somehow he existed both within the road and outside it at the same time. The desert air grew heavier as I sped along. Every instinct screamed to stop, but I knew the instant I slowed, he would match my pace. His presence followed me like a shadow with teeth. The truck's headlights seemed to illuminate him more clearly with each mile, revealing nothing more than an impossible stillness, an unnatural, upright posture that mocked reality itself. My hands shook on the wheel, cold sweat streaking my forehead. Another curve in the highway appeared ahead, jagged cliffs cutting into the desert floor. My eyes scanned the roadside desperately. I felt trapped in a narrowing corridor of black stone and sand. The figure hadn't moved. He didn't need to. He was always exactly where I feared he would be. Every sighting deepened the sense of being hunted, yet I couldn't see anyone chasing me. It was the anticipation that killed the silence. I whispered aloud, "Who are you?" The desert swallowed my words immediately, returning only the faint hum of tires on asphalt. Then, unmistakably, a voice repeated me back. "Who are you?" It was low, hollow, and far too precise. Not human, but mimicking human inflection. My chest tightened with panic. Realization hit me. This thing wasn't trying to walk ahead. It was learning, copying, existing outside the normal flow of time and space. I dared a glance in the mirror. No trace of him appeared behind me, only the endless dark of desert rock and sand. But I could hear the faint scrape of movement somewhere out there. I pressed the accelerator harder, trying to put miles between myself and whatever existed on this highway. Yet I could feel it mirroring me, matching every motion, every thought, like a predator that didn't need to chase. It was already with me. The next plateau opened up ahead, moonlight spilling weakly across the sand. I spotted a rest stop several hundred feet away and considered swerving toward it. It would give me light, maybe safety, maybe other people. But the moment I slowed, the figure appeared once more directly in the path I was aiming for. My heart hammered in my chest. There was no escape, no place to hide. He was everywhere the road allowed. I couldn't stop thinking logically, even as panic consumed me. None of this made sense. The desert is vast and empty, yet he moved faster than any human, appearing miles ahead of where he should be. My mind grasped for explanation, anything. Then it hit me. He didn't move in ordinary space. He existed in some other rhythm, following the road, anticipating my presence. Learning, copying me, waiting for the moment I would realize I could never outrun him. I gritted my teeth and drove straight past the rest stop. I refused to give him an opening, any chance to step into my world. The truck rattled over sand and stones, my headlights illuminating the road like a thin blade of light. For a fleeting instant, I thought I saw him standing on the asphalt ahead, then nothing. Just desert, just endless black stretching on every side. And then I saw it, a faint movement in the distance. A shadow, tall and rigid, matching the last bend in the road. My heart leapt into my throat. It was him. His arm rose slowly into the air again, perfectly still, as though carved from darkness itself. I pressed the accelerator harder, gripping the wheel with white-knuckled intensity. The night stretched endlessly before me. The highway had become a corridor of dread. I passed the shadow again, daring not to slow. Every turn, every bend, revealed him in the distance, waiting. It wasn't just a hitchhiker. It was something else entirely. A presence that could replicate, anticipate, and mimic me perfectly. My own voice whispered in the desert wind, repeated back to me in hollow imitation. The feeling of being watched, pursued, copied, left me raw with fear and exhaustion. Finally, the horizon began to brighten with the faint light of dawn. My pulse still raced, but the figure had vanished, or so I thought. I kept my eyes on the road, terrified of seeing him reappear in the morning shadows. The highway curved, the desert opening to the wide valley floor. My hands were clammy, my body tense, yet the figure did not show. I dared a slow exhale. I might have survived. I pulled into a small roadside parking area as the first sunbeams crested the distant mountains. The desert was silent, beautiful, and ordinary again. But I knew better. Somewhere back along the dark curves of highway, the hitchhiker waited. He wasn't gone. He'd only receded into the desert's rhythm, learning, copying, waiting. And I understood with a chill that would never leave me. One day he would be there again, perfectly ahead of me,